What makes the Shelby lineup one of the most sought-after muscle cars in history? Is it the monstrous V8 engines, the acceleration that pins you to your seat? Or is it the legendary name of Carrol Shelby? From 1960 to 1980, Shelby crafted some of the fastest and most thrilling Mustangs to ever hit the streets. In this list, we'll dive deep into 8 of the fastest muscle cars ever built by Shelby. Let's get to it. The 1971 Shelby Mustang GT marked the end of an era, as it was one of the last true muscle cars before rising insurance costs and stricter emissions regulations began to strangle high-performance vehicles. Under the hood, it packed a 429 Cobra Jet V8, capable of producing 370 horsepower and 450 pound-feet of torque. With a 0 to 60 mile per hour time of around 5.8 seconds and a top speed of 140 miles per hour, it was fast for its time. The 1971 model was also the largest Shelby Mustang ever built, reflecting Ford's move toward bigger, heavier cars in the early 70s. Its aggressive front-end styling, massive hood scoops, and signature Shelby badging made it instantly recognizable. Originally, these cars sold for around $5,000, but today, finding one in good condition can set collectors back upwards of $100,000. It remains one of the rarest Shelby Mustangs, as production reduced in the early 70s. While the 1971 Shelby Mustang GT signaled the end of an era for high-performance muscle cars, the next car on the list represented a golden age of refinement and balance. The 1968 Shelby GT350 took everything great about the original GT350 and refined it even further. Under the hood, it featured a high-performance 302 cubic inch V8 that produced 250 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque. While this might seem modest, the GT350 was incredible, with a 0 to 60 time of around 6.5 seconds and a top speed of approximately 130 miles per hour. One of the most distinctive features of the 1968 model was its redesigned front end, which featured a longer hood, fog lights, and an aggressive grille. It also introduced the now iconic sequential rear turn signals. The GT350 was a perfect balance between raw power and handling, making it one of the most versatile Shelby Mustangs. Originally sold for around $4,300, the GT350 is now a collector's item, often fetching over $120,000 at auctions. While the 1968 Shelby GT350 balanced power and handling with refined design, the next car on the list took a different path, serving as an experimental prototype that helped shape the future of Shelby Mustangs. Have you ever heard of a Shelby Mustang that wasn't actually built by Carrol Shelby himself? This is where the 1965 Shelby Mustang 2+2 enters the story. Unlike other Shelby Mustangs, this one was actually a prototype built by Ford as a test for a potential Shelby-branded fastback. It featured a modified 289 cubic inch V8, producing around 306 horsepower and capable of reaching 0 to 60 in just over 6 seconds. This car remains one of the rarest and most mysterious Shelbys ever built. Some believe that only 1 or 2 of these experimental models were ever produced before Shelby decided to focus on the GT350 instead. With a top speed of roughly 135 miles per hour, it was certainly no slouch. But its real significance lies in the fact that it laid the groundwork for future Shelby fastbacks. While the 1965 Shelby Mustang 2+2 was an experimental prototype that laid the groundwork for future Shelby fastbacks, the next car on the list took the legacy to the next level, with even more power and aggressive styling. Powered by a 428 Cobra Jet V8, this beast produced 335 horsepower, though many believed it was closer to 400 in reality, and 440 pound-feet of torque. It could launch from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 5.4 seconds with a top speed of around 140 miles per hour. The GT500 featured aggressive styling changes, including an elongated nose, massive air intakes, and a ducktail spoiler, giving it one of the meanest looks of any Shelby ever made. While it originally sold for about $4,500, today it can fetch anywhere from $150,000 to over $200,000 depending on condition. It's a rare gem with fewer than 3,000 units ever built across both years. Did you know that the 1970 Shelby GT500 wasn't actually built in 1970? Every single GT500 from that year was actually a leftover 1969 model that didn't sell. Instead of scrapping them, Ford pulled off an unusual move by convincing the federal government to let them assign new 1970 VINs to nearly 800 cars. To make them look different from the 1969 models, Ford added a simple chin spoiler, but under the hood, they were the same. While the 1969 to 1970 Shelby GT500 combined raw power with aggressive styling, the next car on the list took things even further, dominating the track in a way few Mustangs ever had. The 1965 Shelby GT350R wasn't just a muscle car, it was a full-fledged race car built for the track. Featuring a high-output 289 V8 that pushed out 360 horsepower, this car could hit 0 to 60 in just 4.9 seconds, with a top speed of nearly 150 miles per hour. Shelby stripped out everything unnecessary: rear seats, insulation, and even some comfort features to make this car as light and fast as possible. Only 36 units were built, making it one of the rarest Shelbys ever. If you want one today, be prepared to shell out over $1 million at auction. The 1965 Shelby GT350R was called the Flying Mustang, but not just because of its speed. During its debut SCCA race in Texas, the GT350R, piloted by legendary driver Ken Miles, lived up to its name in the most dramatic way possible, by taking flight. On multiple occasions, this Shelby was seen on air. The GT350R stormed through the 1965 season, securing the SCCA's B Production Championship in its first attempt. This was no fluke. Shelby's masterpiece went on to claim the title for 3 consecutive years, cementing its place as one of the most formidable racing Mustangs ever built. While the 1965 Shelby GT350R was a track-dominating lightweight racer, the next car took a different approach by bringing big block power and aggressive styling to the streets like never before. Have you ever wondered why the 1967 Shelby GT500 is often called the ultimate muscle car? This car had a monstrous 428 Police Interceptor V8, producing 355 horsepower and 420 pound-feet of torque. With a 0 to 60 mile per hour time of 5.4 seconds and a top speed of 135 miles per hour, it was at the top of its game. One of its most famous features was the roll bar and racing harness, which gave it a serious track-ready look. Only around 2,050 of these were ever built, making it a prized collector's item worth over $250,000 today. While the 1967 Shelby GT500 packed raw muscle and aggressive styling, the next car on the list was all about precision and performance. The GT350 wasn't just a fast car, it was the car that put Shelby on the map. Its 289 cubic inch V8 pushed out 306 horsepower, making it one of the best performing Mustangs of its time. With a 0 to 60 of 6.5 seconds and a top speed of 135 miles per hour, it was a force to be reckoned with. Shelby built just over 2,300 of these models across 1965 and 1966, and they remain some of the most collectible classic cars today, often selling for $250,000 or more. Want to know the fascinating story behind the origin of this car? It all started when Ford's Lee Iacocca approached Carrol Shelby with a mission to enhance the Mustang with more power and better handling to boost sales. By August 1964, Shelby got the green light to develop the Mustang as an SCCA B production racer. But for the GT350 to qualify, at least 100 street-legal models had to be built for the 1965 season. When the San Jose plant shut down to retool for the 1966 model year, Shelby converted 252 1965 fastbacks into 66 specs to keep production running. And the name GT350? That came about when Carrol Shelby casually asked Phil Remington how far the race shop was from the production shop. About 350 feet. Just like that, the name was born. And first on our list is the legendary 1968 Shelby GT500 KR, a muscle car that combined brute force with refined luxury. The 1968 Shelby GT500 KR featured a 428 Cobra jet engine that made 335 horsepower, though actual output was rumored to be over 400 horsepower. With a 0 to 60 mile per hour time of just 5.2 seconds and a top speed of around 140 miles per hour, it was the pinnacle of Shelby performance in the 60s. What made the KR special was its balance of luxury and performance. It featured wood-trimmed interiors, air conditioning, and power steering, making it one of the most refined muscle cars of its time. Today, a well-preserved GT500 KR can sell for over $300,000. Wonder what the KR in GT500 KR stands for? If you guessed King of the Road, you're absolutely right. This name wasn't just for show, it was a declaration of dominance. The GT500 KR wasn't just another Mustang, it was Ford's most powerful Mustang ever at that time. Unveiled at the 1967 New York Auto Show, it crushed the competition. With so many legendary cars, which Shelby Mustang is your favorite? Let us know, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into classic muscle cars.